everybody, Young Grasshopper here. Welcome to the Cliffside Bunker in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And this is another strategy tactics video for Axis and Allies 1940 Global 2nd Edition. In this episode, we're going to talk all about Russia Turn 1, their Round 1 turn sequence. We're calling this the R1 withdrawal, and it's got everything to do with the repositioning of their starting units when it comes their turn to go. In the order of play, let's take a look. We're in round 1. As you can see, in Russia goes right after Germany. They're next. Okay, so as always, I'll just want to remind everybody that this is a strategy tactics video and it's going to be filled with my own opinions. I do these videos to help new players so that they can gain some confidence playing in their first few games and show them a few options, of course, and any veterans that have any suggestions. Please make some comments and put them in there. If you're new to the hobby, go to the comments and check out what other people say, guys. But there's lots of different things that people do in this game, and that makes sense considering that the game has been around for a long time and all kinds of strategies are being tested and whatnot. But I'm just going to go over some straightforward stuff that I think is just good basics for new players. Now, obviously, it's extremely rare that Germany on their turn 1, which is before us, are going to attack us on this front. I'm not saying it's impossible. There's lots of good ideas out there for the Germans to attack the Russians. We're going to do this video as if they didn't, but I'm going to still spend a couple minutes talking about if they do. Now, obviously, these are valuable infantry on the front here. 7 infantry that could get back and help defend Moscow. So the Germans may want to take out all 7 or some combination of 2 out of 3 of these territories right here. They're going to come in with the infantry that are right next door plus some tanks. Okay, these tanks can reach at least here, and we have some aircraft. Now forget that they're going to be neglecting some areas on this side, right? The point is that if they declare war on us turn 1, then we have to deal with losing all these infantry. Now after that, there could be a tank here, tank left here, maybe a couple of infantry depending on how well they did in the rolls. You may ask yourself, well, why would Germany want to do that? Well, they do get rid of the valuable infantry, like I said, but basically what's happening is they're drawing more Russian infantry towards them. They don't have to chase down these infantry all the way across the hostile environment of Russia when they can get even more infantry to come even closer to them, and their production hubs are going to buy maybe some mechanized infantry, have some aircraft, so that whatever does come in to try and take out those lone tanks that were left here also get counterattacked, and that's more infantry loss. So very sound strategy, however, not being used a lot with experienced players. They prefer to do more important things with their aircraft and everything else, and just posture and poise for an attack on turn 2, maybe possibly even as late as turn 3. But as a Russian strategy, we want to explain how you can counter this, and I was doing this many years ago. I was doing this quite often. It became valuable to me to destroy that many Russian infantry and then still have the buying power for the land units to come and be on the Moscow doorstep early in the game. But a couple of my friends kind of figured it out and I stopped doing it. And basically what happened is I got crushed simply because they had a very successful strafe. So the counterattack on turn 1 Russia with a tank here, maybe a couple of infantry, we want to kind of take those out because those are freebies to us. They're very tempting. So but we need to understand that we're walking right into a trap that Germany wants us to go and go after those tanks, if in fact they're still left there and they rolled well turn 1. But what we want to do is we want to strafe. That's the key. So we want to come in, hit a unit and get out, hit 2 units, get out. Depends how much is left here. Obviously, if there's only 1 tank, you want to come in with 2 infantry perhaps and some aircraft just to get that tank and lose a man. But remember, everything is a meat grinder that you take closer to their production hub. So the counter has to be very, very timed well, that you don't leave even more. Strafing is the best. And once you get successful strafes on those counters, if possible, then the Germans have nothing to counter, have nothing to attack, and they basically don't get those infantry that they set that trap for. So anyway, that's that. We're going to talk now as if the Germans did not attack, which is the majority of games. Okay, so we're going to get into the turn sequence. Again, this is R1 withdrawals, and there's a reason why we call it withdrawals, because Russia cannot declare war themselves. I mean, obviously the Germans have not come in here is the assumption, and they're doing things on this side, and the rules state that they just cannot declare war. They cannot come in and attack this pro-axis. They cannot come down here and do things here. They must stay on their own original territories. They may not attack the axis. They can, however, come into China territories, and we need to make sure that we understand the Mongolian rule correctly. And the first thing that I suggest, the absolute first thing that I suggest for the Russian player turn one, is to go ahead and verbally declare war on the Japanese player. So Russia declares war on Japan turn one, and this should happen every game. And it's just, if anything at all, just a reminder that it's not pertaining to the Mongolian rule. And you'll get a lot of Japanese players that are just like, well, does that negate the Mongolian rule? And then there'll be a healthy discussion just to lay down the fact that everybody understands what the Mongolian rule is. Go ahead and declare. There's no reason not to declare war on Japan. You don't have to attack them. This does not turn at all, so go ahead and do that. Now, next, just want to get into purchasing. So in our turn sequence, we're going to purchase new units. Let's look at some options. Okay, so Russia begins the game with 37 IPCs. I've got some options laid out here. We're going to look at each individual stack. And basically, we're just trying to get down a good philosophy of what it is that they should be buying, what are deemed acceptable. Now this is off the board. This can be viewed as very, very original, this type of purchase. Now it's not unheard of. I mean, it's pretty early to have those types of defensive units hit, but then again, maybe there's strategies people have for aircraft for Russia, but they can be used later in the late rounds as great defending units in Moscow. So it's not unheard of that you buy fighters. What's even more practical is if you just buy one fighter. So I've got a buddy, Iron Stitch, who developed a philosophy, and he's sticking to it right now until it fails him. And that philosophy is that he's going to buy one Russian fighter every round. Here's a popular one, especially with me. I'll talk about this one in a second, but 6 tanks. I don't recommend holding back money. There's all kinds of different combinations that we can use all of our money to get, whether it be like pretty much any land unit. I mean, this is very viable. We got a combination of infantry, artillery, tanks, and mechanized infantry. These are the types. You see a theme going on here, right? There's no C units. So here again, we got 10 infantry, 11 infantry, 1 artillery. Now this is off the board as well, right? But it's not unheard of. I mean, this here obviously is for an aggressive Russian player, right? But I'll talk about aggression as we go. Here's something a little bit more practical, you know. Infantry and artillery. Check out Corporal Clegg's video about infantry and artillery versus tank purchases. Highly recommend. I'll put a link in the description box of this video along with a tank. I do like the idea of a tactical bomber simply because on the setup we have 2 fighters, 2 Russian fighters and 1 tactical. Of course, a tactical gets boosted to 4 when combined with a fighter. So having a second a second tac bomber goes nicely with those 2 fighters. Now it's an automatic 4. Really, I mean, there's no real reason to buy this bomber, knowing that a $1 unit cheaper in attack bomber will give you the same results on attack, and of course it'll defend at 3 instead of this strategic bomber at 1. So moving on, just want to show you and talk to you about a few things. The reason why I prefer this purchase myself, these 6 tanks, is because it's a precursor if there's a sea lion. So if there is a sea lion, then I'm going to have my 6 tanks on the board right away without that stall, without losing that one purchasing round where I could get aggressive units on the board. Because if London falls, the Allies are going to need some help, and it's going to normally come in the form of aggression from Russia now that they're safe or Moscow is safe, right? So I buy the 6 just to sort of say, hey, go ahead, try it, go for London, right? If that is in fact their plan. Now, obviously, if they turn 2, attack me, then these are the last tanks I'll ever buy for Russia. Now, not saying that if they continue with Sea Lion, I'm going to buy even more tanks. I'm just saying it's nice to get that first stack tank purchase right away, sort of being prepared for advancing and going hard for Berlin if there's a Sea Lion right away. And then if they show their hand and they are in fact going for London, you can get even more aggressive, right? And you've already created the start that you need to play that way. So all kinds of good options there, of course. I mean, there's sound options. Obviously, the theme is land units, land units, land units. And in this game, playing up against good Axis players, we want to protect Moscow. Now, there's all kinds of philosophies, endgame philosophies, and how to play Russia. And basically, people like to play Russia because it really challenges their defensive and intuition. They like the idea of strategically defending, but also like the ability to automatically adjust and go on the attack if that's what's needed. Being able to identify when you should pull back and when you should strike and hit something is very exhilarating to players that like playing Russia. But for the most part, if you are just into aircraft and sea units and all that other stuff, it's not going to be an exciting nation for you to play, right? So anyway, let's go on with some withdrawal or maneuvers. I didn't want to say the R1 retreat simply because it's not a retreat. It's not a negative withdrawal. It's more of a tactical maneuver because we're going to reposition our starting units. So we're going to look over here first. The reason why we're going to look over here first is because many times in our group games anyway, at least the game starts, Germany begins their turn and Japan says, okay, can you move these for me so I can go? And in our groups, that's what we do. We don't mind. So the Russian player is going to move these. That'll be their move. Obviously, nothing has been done over here yet, right? We're going to declare war on Japan, like I mentioned. However, we're going to wait to purchase. We're going to wait to move this stuff while Germany's going. And then Japan can go as well. Now, some people don't like that, but this is how our group does it. So we're just going to go ahead and move these, okay? And then Japan can go ahead with their turn just to cut down time and things like that. So what I like to do is I like to move these this way, okay? And I like to move all this into here, all right? Now, that might seem like the obvious thing to a lot of people. However, but there's options. I mean, you could move everything into here, for example, or you could just keep this like this and leave 6 here and bait them, or you can, leave that there, to take a couple casualties because these are the attacking units, these are not. And of course, if you're going to leave anything, leave the guns because of course, if they are going to attack, they're going to attack with aircraft, probably. You could put that there and then wait. The reason why people leave this here and bait Japan into doing it. For example, let's say it's 6, okay, and we put 1 gun there, okay. Now, let's say it's 6 with 1 gun or 2 guns. It doesn't really matter, 1 gun, 2 gun. The point is that if this gets attacked, then the Mongolian rule is triggered and Russia will get 6 units here. 2, 4, 5, 6. So for this 6, and maybe even a plane, so we're going to lose 6, and we're going to maybe shoot down a plane. We'll see how many land units we get, but these are going to pop up. So that could be a good trade for some people, but I don't want to talk too much about this. Basically what I do is I just do this, because what I want to do is I want to later, when Japan spreads out in late rounds, goes down there and gets all caught up and maybe gets in trouble down there, I can easily come in here and snake and do something up here and cause problems to them. Once all their boats and once all their aircraft are gone and doing something else, okay? So the reason why I like sending these this way is because they can get on their horse and start going, okay? They are the furthest west of the stacks, and they can move. Now, I'm not going to bother sending all these back. I know from experience that they're not going to really get there in time, and their long trek home is more of a problem on this side, because you're giving all of this for Japan with no fight. So if everything's walking back for some sort of Moscow defense, there's just way too much here for Japan to just gobble up with no resistance whatsoever. So I leave these here, and just to keep them honest, and like I said, they're going to come back here. They're never going to come through here. This is my philosophy. They're going to come back here later when it's safe, and then come in and take Manchuria later, or help the Americans take Korea if that's a thing that can happen. But these are always now moving this way. So these will never go any further this way, and this will never go back. This is now on its horse and it's going this way. Now, once it gets here in late rounds, it's got a choice. It can come in here and help, because Japan might be here by this time. They might even be here, but more likely they're here. And then they can come in and put up a stand, right? Or they're already on their way, and they might actually get to Russia if Germany, for whatever reason, stalled and are going to get to Russia very late. Then these 6 make a big difference in the defense of Moscow if they can get there before Germany does. So that's what it's going to look like there, okay? And of course, these guns always stay around here because there's a lot of aircraft. You could even send one, try and go around this way, but they should stick together. All right, over here, guys, now we're going to start maneuvering these here. Now, Germany has finished. We're not going to assume or change the board as to what the German positioning looks like. It's not really important. Okay, we're just going to reposition our starting units, and let's do that. So what I like to do, and again, there's all kinds of opinions, right? But what I like to do, and again, I'm just explaining my moves too. I'm not saying, okay, put that there, now put that there, now you're ready to play turn 2. I'm going to explain everything that I do and why I do it, and then you can decide for yourself if it's something you're going to try or trust, okay? So as new players, right, what I like to do is I like to just come in here. You say, well, that's an act of war. Well, you know, we already declared war on Japan, remember? We already declared war on Japan. Don't scratch your head about the Mongolian rule. Don't let that influence your decision to declare war or anything. We'll talk about the Mongolian rule in a separate video. But come here with these, all right? They're going to be safe. And also to come here with these. Now, this is going to do 2 things. It's going to put pressure on Japan to not just gobble up the Burma Road like they want to. Now, I'm not saying that these will end up in French Indochina. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that all these are going to end up dying on the coast or whatever. What I'm saying is they are in now a position where they can do different things. They can always come back. They can always come back. Remember, I'm buying 6 tanks. So depending on what Germany does, right, those 6 tanks are either going to roll towards Berlin if they have to, or they're going to stay home and defend and try and do some counter attacks, right? There could be more tanks that I purchase on top of the 6 tanks, or they could be the last tanks I ever purchased for the whole game. Okay, but I put these here because I always like supporting China with Russia. That's me. That's me. Now, over here, again, I'm not ready to attack anything. I don't even really want to get into a position to attack, to be honest, or counter. I don't know what Germany's going to do. They could attack turn 2. They could attack turn 3. They could wait all the way to 4 because they're doing something in Africa. That maybe they're preparing for sea lion, whatever. It could be a long time, right? I'm not going to assume and build my strategies off what I think Germany will do, and then all of a sudden I'm prepared for something that hasn't come and I'm at a position whatever. So basically I'm going to put myself in the best position to do multiple different things, right, and not worry about what Germany's going to do. I'm going to take these, and there's an air base there, so 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, did I do that right? 1 2 3 4 5 6. Actually they can only go 5, right? So these here, okay, now this, it doesn't really matter, but we're gonna give it a new home anyway because I don't want to be here, and I'll explain why. But first and foremost, let's take this sub. Let's do the C units. Let's get them out of the way. I don't want to forget talking about the C units. Let's get them out of the way. These always seem to be the units that when I'm setting up the table blind without the setups, and I'm double checking my work, and I feel like, oh, I'm about to get a perfect setup just by not using the charts at all. And of course I don't put the sub up here. But let's go 1 2 3. Reason being is there is a base right here, a naval base from Leningrad, and I can go here. Now there's usually a German fleet, and by doing this here, it's just one of those head scratchers. Germany would be like, what are you doing, right? And it's like, you know, I'm getting in your head, right? I'm living rent free between your ears, buddy, right? So you're doing stuff, but there is a purpose. I mean, you're not just doing stuff to be goofy, right? I mean, you know, being right there, if you're going to be neutral, if you're not at war with Germany, you can sit there. It's completely your prerogative, okay? And being here isn't just being here waiting to be at war so that you can convoy. I mean, you might get destroyed before you even get a chance to convoy sitting off here. I actually don't like this spot for the sub throughout the game, and while I'm here I might as well talk about it. So Germany wants this space. They want to put one of their own units here. They don't want you to get 5 IPCs. Maybe they'll rush for Archangel, right, and deny that 5 IPCs from you that way, but more than likely they're going to try and get a sub, their own sub up here. So you being up here and their sub being here, I mean, they can't really attack each other because the defender's always going to submerge. So the NO is negated by being here, all right? But like, you can convoy them here, but they're always going to be around here. They might buy a destroyer and take you out and still be in here with a sub or a destroyer, and then you lost your sub. Eventually, by coming in here, right, you're in good position to maybe hit something if you're at war turn 2. If they attack you turn 2 and you're at war, that's good position, right? But eventually, you probably want to be here. The reason why I like being here, and I know that it's only 2 IPCs that I'm going to get convoyed there, is because I'm almost always guaranteed 100% that I'm going to be able to stay there. It's a nice little nook, okay? This little forge, and you stay in there and you convoy Normandy as long as Germany controls it. And it's going to be turn 2 before they even get there, unless they attack it and control it turn 1. So, I mean, by being here, Normandy may not even be taken yet, but on turn 2, they're going to take it. And turn 2, you're going to come here, but that doesn't mean you're going to be at war even still and capable or allowed to convoy. But if you are, you're in a great position to now convoy for 2 IPCs. We're going to get into convoying in a whole other video, and, you know, the odds of 1 sub hitting for 3 versus 2 and all this other stuff. But I like being here because in all my games in which this is the spot that I like and this is the spot that I want to be, I've always, every round I'm at war, have been able to convoy Normandy while the Axis have it, because they will not threaten, they will not come after you, they will not buy a destroyer and come into that little nook there with a destroyer to try and take you out. It's not worth it to them. And then you just, you know, 2 here, 1 here. You may miss, but the point is your sub is doing something, right? And of course, let's say, for example, and we'll just move these, right? We'll just pretend that they're here. We're not going to move all the units, but turn 1, remember I said be there. Why not? You know, get into their head. And with these C units right here, we're going to put up a blocker. All right, now this doesn't necessarily need to be anywhere, okay, but it can go there if you want. A lot of people say that there's value in putting it here. It doesn't really matter where this goes unless there's a destroyer purchase turn 1, but most of the time there's not. The sub can be anywhere. Let's just put it there for now, just to be a jerk, but this is important. This is absolutely important. You need to be able to extend this out and create a blocker. Now that cruiser is either going to be ignored all game, and there's strategies behind ignoring the Baltic fleet with the rules, and if you understand them, you really don't need to hit it at all. But sometimes the Germans will take it out because they want to operate in here with what little fleet they have, and then do landings in Leningrad, non-combat movement landings in Leningrad on their way to Moscow. This is going to act as a blocker so that when Germany does attack turn 1 or turn 2 or turn 3, when they are ready to attack, then they can't open up with an amphibious assault on Leningrad. Okay, so that's why that's there. All right, moving on past the C units. All right, and of course, if we end up losing all of our C units, so be it. We want to take down a German unit if we can on our way to the bottom of the Baltic. But more maneuvering. We want to get these infantry off the front. Now, I always think about positioning in a way of how many spaces can I reach? What is my range, right? Like, for example, take a look up here. Right, and a lot of people, a lot of new players, right, you know, there's nothing really wrong with it. They just push everything in here and they say, ta-da, there we go, right, I'm safe, my turn 1 is done, whatever, all this stuff is in here, and they build 3 units, nicely fortified, whatever, right? And, you know, that is good, that's good, there's nothing wrong with that. But let's take a look at its range, its counterattack range, right? So all these units, let's face it, they move 1 space. So they can come here and counterattack here. No reason to, because the Germans aren't going to make it there anyway, right? But that, at least, you know, my illustration, the point is that they can reach Belarus and they can reach Baltic States. They can reach Vyborg, they can reach Karelia. You know, I mean, coming in here and dropping here is possible, right? Turn 1. The point is that you're not going to just rack your brain wondering, okay, how far can the enemy get? You want to ask yourself too also, and yes, you want to know what can the enemy hit, where can they be situated by your next turn, but you also want to know, well, what can you hit? Where are the things? Here's a fact: you cannot hit Eastern Poland with this stuff right now. Now on turn 2, it's highly likely that the Germans come in here and take Eastern Poland. They could put up a blocker here by putting 1 unit because you left it blank, so they take the Baltic States, they gain the 1 IPC, and they put 1 unit here. Now, mind you, there's no fast movers, so the blocker isn't really a thing right here, right? It's not really a good example, but what I'm saying is here, and here, this stack can only hit this. They can't hit this. Now, let's give you the option that I like to do, okay? And we're withdrawing, okay? So we have Belarus there. Let's just move everything that can reach into Belarus. And I'll show you something. So all this moves, sorry, that can't reach. All this moves into Belarus. Let's even put the plane there. Okay. So this is everything that can reach into Belarus turn 1. And all this is here. Now, positioning, we're going to move this here. We want to protect Leningrad still. I mean, this is going to allow us to keep Leningrad, or guarantee that we keep Leningrad. Okay, now when purchasing, and I didn't mention this when showing you the stacks, when purchasing, we want to also figure out and strategize which factories we're going to build on. So it's not just about the types of units and the quantity of units with Russia. Their logistics have to be, am I building here? If so, how many? Am I building on this factory? If so, how many? And if so, how many on this and this, right? So they have a lot of production facilities that they can use, especially in the first couple of turns, right? Up to a certain point before Germany starts bombing these and you have to retreat from them, right? But whatever you're purchasing, I mean, 3 units, and I would even say 3 of the tanks that I'm suggesting that I bought come and sit here, and 3 can be here as well, right? So let's put all of this together here because we're going to want to protect the 3 tanks that we buy here. And again, we don't know how they situated, right? But if there's a lot of tanks, if there's a lot of mechs, if there's a lot of aircraft, right? Obviously, we're going to come in here like this instead and hold up, and we're not going to build the 3 tanks here, okay? And depending on how many tanks and aircraft are here, or mechanized infantry, and we leave this blank, right, we're not going to build the 3 tanks here unless it's safe to do so, all right? So this here, however, should be here. We're not interested in protecting these. We know that the Germans are going to come here and have a stack of at least 5, maybe more infantry here in Finland, right? And that's coming this way. We're not going to hold here and stand them up here. We're going to protect Leningrad, and we're going to obviously try our best to get 3 unit types here. And if it means keeping a fighter there, and we know we're protected here, we could even leave a blocker, and then that would guarantee us to build our 3 tanks here, okay? But let's leave that fighter there, okay? Now, with these AA guns, I like to come here. And the reason being is because there are lots and lots of Japanese aircraft that might do a lot of damage to China. And helping with these, here's what I say. Remember how I said that these aren't necessarily going to keep going this way? These could easily, in a decision, because remember I said Russia needs to be able to react and be a good player on the defensive, but also know when to go forward and attack and counter punch as well. Well, that's why we need to not have a definitive plan for units like this, right? They can come back, right? That's easy. But these, these I'm okay with just sending them in. They can help. They can be with 1 stack here, 1 stack here with the Chinese. Eventually they'll walk in here with stacks of Chinese, and then the Chinese will have an aircraft carrier, right? I'm sorry, an anti-aircraft gun with a stack here, a stack here. If they're really in tight and Japan's really collapsing on them, then maybe the 2 AA guns will be with a large Chinese stack right here, and 2 AA guns are going to go a long way in helping defend and save that Chinese stack, right? So I say let these just go. A lot of people will say, well, they're very important in the defense of Moscow, and they're probably right. We're trying to get these back to Moscow, remember? And the same thing with these 2 aircraft. I didn't mention that. We got the same philosophy with these 2 aircraft as we do with these 4 units. Now, it's highly likely that we are anticipating that these 4 come back. And it's highly likely that we're anticipating that these 2 aircraft come back. But with these 2 aircraft here like this, and these 4 units here like this, it's really going to get into the head of Japan and start thinking that they're going to have to deal with these all game. They don't know what our plans are for them, right? We may be thinking to ourselves, we're going to send those back, no problem. But Japan might be thinking, man, I got to deal with those aircraft all game now. How am I going to deal with that? And then maybe they put themselves out of position because they're thinking too much about these aircraft, right? When all along you're thinking they're going to go back home, right? So everything else here can come up. It doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter. I mean, so for example, we got 2 units here in Russia that move 1. Now, if we come here, then we can hit here, here, and here. If we come here, then we can hit here, here, and here. You understand what I'm saying? So depending on what range you want to be, a lot of people think range is only for planes, but you want good range to be in a position, good positional play, to be in a position to be able to have the range to counterattack a territory next door that you may not have the range if you're here. If you're here with these, then you're not going to be able to hit here. If you are here with these, then you're not going to be able to hit Archangel, right? So that's what I'm talking about with range. So let's go back to Belarus and why we put these here, because our range is much better, I would say. So now this stack with this stack can now hit Eastern Poland. So a turn 2 attack by the Germans coming here would need to bowl and ball and have a large stack here. And we could be talking about the Italians coming in here, opening it up so that the aircraft land in Eastern Poland. We could be talking about that. But the point is that we're making a better stand by doing this than having a split force here and a split force here. And this is left to hit Eastern Poland. It's not big enough. And this is left to hit Baltic States. It's not big enough, but together they can hit at least one together. All right. And of course, the whole point is to get off this front. All right. All right, so depending on whether or not Germany stacks this with mechs and tanks, I mean, we got to be careful of how they can roll. Obviously, if there's only infantry and artillery in one territory, we don't have to worry about putting up blockers, right? But it's quite possible that we do need to do something like this, depending on how they stack Poland with fast movers, all right? So just like how we were talking about needing our own fast movers and if there's a blocker ahead of us and whatnot, I mean, the same works for the other side as well. So we go ahead and we place our new units. We're not doing combat movements unless we do that stuff we talked about, strafing the front. But we're going to skip combat movements. We're going to go straight into non-combat movements, and then we place our new units after we're done that. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to be very mindful. We don't want to expose units on this factory, expose units on this factory. You might say, well, aren't I wasting a factory? Well, you know, what's more important, getting units closer to the front or having sound positioning, right? Again, it's all in how they set themselves up. Right? It's quite possible there's no fast movers over here because, you know, many tanks and many mechs that took over these French territories still need to find their way all the way back here, right? But again, we just need to be aware. These here can stay here or they can come up. I recommend that they come up. In my early days, in the first few years, I always planned on the Russians taking Iraq because there's money down here for them and stuff like that. But you know, that's still a possibility. Like the fast movers could come here like this and these could stay. And the problem with this is it's just like the whole thing with the submarine. You're waiting to find out if, or waiting to find out when you get brought into the war. And once you are brought into the war, it's scary over here at Germany and Italy now coming in. And, oh, I'm at the war now. Great, I can do this plan where I come down here all along. But it's like, by that time, all your forces that should be up here dealing with this now that you're at war are down here doing some gambit, something. I mean, it's still viable. I'm not saying it's not. I mean, there's good reason to be down here and collect the money for Russia with that national objective, the spread of communism national objective. But, you know, I prefer this. It's a little bit more straightforward. All right. Okay, guys, that's it. That's the R1 withdraw. We did withdraw a lot of our units and reposition them to support some areas. And again, I mean, just because we have an idea, a strategy, or philosophy for repositioning doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be what we ultimately do with these units. We need the flexibility as Russia to either be defensive or aggressive depending on who the axis are focusing on. All right, and those 6 tanks that I laid down, just a preference. I have teammates that do not like that purchase from me, right? But it's my preference so that I can stay prepared and get that one hard aggressive purchase down the board first, so that if my teammate, you know, the same teammate that is saying, what are you doing purchasing tanks, and they lose their capital, and then they say, oh, I'm so glad you purchased so many tanks. But again, it's a one-time purchase, and it's all just to get information, and my purchasing habits will either change or get ramped up. I hope that was helpful, guys. Experiment, but there's not a whole lot that can be done. Sure, there's some philosophy differences perhaps, but nonetheless, you want to make sure that not only do you reposition your troops, but you have a clear idea of why you're repositioning them, why you're putting them there instead of here, and blah blah blah, right? But anyway, awesome. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate the comments, guys, and the likes and the shares, and lots of videos coming up. We got updates, we got G40 tutorials, we got more videos about my tournament edition rules, so stay tuned. There's lots of content coming on the channel this year, and in the meantime, may all the rules be ones. Cheers, see you in the next vid.